This is the Seller Process Podcast, where we talk about the best systems, processes, and SOPs for your Amazon business so that you can regain control of your time, build up your team, and scale your e-com empire.
Hello, entrepreneurs. If you are struggling with a low converting listing, or you're simply looking for solutions to maximize the potential of your existing products to get more clicks and more sales, then this episode is for you. Our guest today will share with us a systematic method to make A/B tests and run experiments on the most important elements of our listings so that we can make informative decisions based on real data to create the best possible version of our listing. I'm talking about Anthony Confrancesco, the industry liaison of PickFu. He's the previous owner of Virtuous Graphics, a marketing agency offering copywriting, graphic design, photography, and videography to Amazon sellers. You may have seen Anthony on several webinars, podcasts, and speaking engagements on Amazon, creative output, and cross-cultural people management. Hey, Anthony, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Hey, Gianmarco, thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here for the seller process.
Awesome. All right. So, we're going to talk today about A/B tests and running experiments, right? So this is something that I would consider a little bit an advanced, let's say, technique to optimize our listings. This is not what actually people usually do. And what I see people doing most of the time, they approach listing creation with, a mindset of set it and forget it, right? They create the listing and then just leave it as it is, for a very long time, and which might not be, the best optimal version of that listing, right? So it might lead to lower conversion and lower click-through rates. So, I think they might do this as maybe for laziness, or maybe because they don't know a better solution, right? So, for me, the first question would be for you would be to, let people know what could be the impact of, running these experiments, and what can we learn with by running these experiments to optimize our listings, with giving us practical examples, okay? Because this could let people understand the real potential of running experiment, and then maybe they might want to start do it as well.
Yes. So first and foremost, when it comes to conversion rates, sessions, whatever the metrics are on Amazon for getting people to actually buy the product, one thing I can tell you for certain is that over the years, year after year after year, unit session percentages on average have been going up. Click-through rates have been going up, because what's happening is bigger and bigger brands are coming into Amazon and they're getting much more effective at creating a converting listing. And so what does this mean? Like when I was running my agency, this would be a little bit more than 2 years ago, we could make it consistently have someone get on page one with a unit session percentage, sometimes like as low as 25%, sometimes like 45%. You could be like number one, like the highest converting listing on the page. What's happened though over the years is that 2 years ago, I used to say a 45% unit session percentage was really good. Now it's like I'm really trying to look at like 65+% for certain products in certain categories. And so what this means is that if you created a listing and you haven't changed it for the past 2 years, you're probably like the biggest impact on your overall stats is like, as these new sellers get better and better, as these other brands get optimized, they're going to start to bump up in the rankings. And if you just maintain that spot, you're going to start to drop. And so I guess the biggest practical examples that I've seen, I was working on a project recently. It was a home good product, and the listing started off at a 45% unit session percentage, right? And so we went through, we redid all of the images, created new main image, new secondary images, and new A+ content. And that's a really good unit session percentage, 45%. I thought there's no way we're going to beat this. And just from the changes of those images, took it from 45 to 65%. Consistently, I'm seeing you're not always going to get it right from the first go, but I'm consistently seeing just going and testing your main image, trying to come up with a better main image. You can see single, if not double digit increases in sessions and click-through rate. And so like these are real numbers. It can definitely happen. I think the thing that's really tricky about it though, is that it's not so simple, right? It's not so like if you're going to go and try to optimize your PPC campaigns, it's very clear, like this is the input, this is the output. What's difficult about what we're going to talk about today and the reason for testing is that you really just don't know what's going to actually work in the end. And sometimes it might not actually go in a positive direction. So it takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of the ability to be like, okay, I know that I want to get better in the end, but I might be wrong on the way to get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. And, it's a really powerful method, if you really understand how to do it. And as you said, it's an art. It's not just science, it's not everything based on with numbers. So you gotta know what to do. So we are expecting, from you to give us some tips today to understand better how to run experiments and A/B tests. So, I want to get it very practical now. So let's try to go through the process of optimization by, creating a hypothetical listing. Okay, so let's try to run these experiments, with us here in the podcast. So let's think that we want to optimize a hypothetical listing, which you may come up with, or we can use, the famous taco holder or whatever. And let's set the goal to increase the metrics of click-through rates and conversion rates. Okay, so where do we start with this approach? Where would you start? Let's start, for example, with optimizing click-through rate. How do we begin?
And the reason I like to start with click-through rate is because it's very simple, right? Click-through rate, if you think about click-through rate, it's going to be linked to one specific part of the listing, which is your main image, right? Now, obviously, your click-through rate can be impacted by things like your title, like your price, your number of reviews. But for the purpose of this interview, right, we're going to focus on the one thing that I can control, and that's the main image, right? And so what I'm trying to do really, anytime I'm optimizing, and we were talking a little bit about optimization kind of being like art. What I've tried to do over the past few years is I try to break it down into a functional framework that really makes sense to a lot of people, because I don't have a creative background. Despite running a creative agency, I can't use Photoshop. I don't know how to shoot a camera off manual mode. That's the truth, right? And so I've just figured this stuff out as I go along. And so the big core principle that I want to emphasize is a lot of people, when they're going in and they're doing any kind of design work, they're focused on one part, which is the aesthetics. What does this thing look like? And that's really important. But what I try to do is I try to break it down and say, okay, if I'm trying to optimize, I'm trying to optimize for aesthetics, yes, but I'm also trying to optimize for flow of information, right? And so what I'm saying is 50% aesthetics, 50% flow of information, but I'm always going to prioritize the flow of information. So let me go back and give that example to the taco holder that you were talking about earlier, right? So if I'm thinking about what can I do from a main image perspective, sure, maybe I can make this thing look better. I can get a higher quality photo. There's different things that I can do maybe to make the image look better. But what I'm really going to focus on is flow of information, right? So if someone's buying this taco holder, by the time they land to that page of Amazon search results, they've typed in taco holder, they know in their head what they're looking for. And now there's something very specific, right, that we need to reaffirm into their brain that, okay, this is the specific listing that I'm looking for. And so, for example, you could show the taco holder just on a white background, right, with just the product itself. Or maybe because this is a taco holder, maybe now we're going to show that it's actually holding a couple different tacos, right? And so that's a very, very simple example. But in terms of flow of information, the person knows what they're looking for, and I want to give that to them, right? So I would just try to probably add some tacos into that image first. But then the second part of that is, once I know, like, okay, should I have tacos in? Should there not be tacos in? Now I want to try to take those tacos and try to say, okay, for the main image standpoint, I want something that's very visually appealing, right? Something that's going to catch someone's eyes. It's going to direct them to that listing and they're going to click in. So once I've decided whether or not, maybe I'll test whether or not I want to actually show tacos in the main image itself, then I'm going to try to actually optimize just for aesthetic appeal. How can I make those tacos look really, really good, really eye-catching? And so maybe it's like we have some toppings on the top, or maybe the market is like at-home tacos versus street tacos. So I'm going to try to figure that out and test it along the way.
Okay, that's interesting. So you're saying that you suggest to use basically this framework. So 50% aesthetics, 50% of flow of information. I'm curious, and actually, for what I understood, you are actually prioritizing the flow of information, right? Because first you understand what is the information that people wants to get, and then optimize for the best aesthetics. So starting with the flow of information, how do we where do we get the information that we need to put into these images or text? How do we know what information people are looking for?
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways to find out, but what you really want to try to do is you want to try to put yourself in the customer's position, right? And you really want to go, again, this is a really important thing to keep in mind, is that the average conversion rate of an Amazon Prime shopper is 74%, right? So what this means, and that's a stat from Amazon. So if someone's shopping for a product online, the vast majority of the time they are going to buy the product if they're on Amazon. And so what you have to think about is like when someone gets to the search results, or if they make it to your product detail page, they are ready to buy the product. And the vast majority of times they will buy the product. So you have to put yourself in the customer's shoes and say, okay, they want to buy this taco holder, but there's a list of requirements in their head before they buy it, right? Like, is this a high quality product? Is this going to do what I need it to do? Like, I don't know if there's problems with the taco holder. Like, is this dishwasher safe? Is it sharp on the edges? Is it going to cut my hands? There's this list of things that they either need to know about the product or objections that they have about the product that need to be satisfied before they add to cart. And so what I try to do in the beginning is I try to make a list of all of these things in total, right? Like, what are all of the things that I could say about the product, whether they're features, whether they're benefits, whether it's about my brand, whether it's overcoming objections. I try to think about all of it, right? I try to write it all down. And then I try to prioritize, okay, I could say a million things about the product, but realistically, I only have time and it's only going to be effective to share a small portion of those. And so once I have this list of everything that we could say, then I try to find validation from real data points. So I'll go and try to read reviews and I'll see, okay, in the reviews is the biggest thing that people are worried about if this taco holder is going to cut their hands because it's too sharp or if it's dishwasher safe. And so once I can kind of come up with a model for like what I believe are the most important things to say about the product, then that's when I'm going to start testing, right, through main image or, the secondary images or A+. But really, that's the challenge on Amazon, because it's like you could say a million things about your product, but it's really about being very, very effective and doing that in a condensed amount of time and space.
Awesome. Okay, interesting. I actually love the stats that you just gave. 74% of people on Amazon actually end up buying a product. So that's the conversion rate of the whole website. So I think it can be like a mindset shift for people, so they have to think that 74% of people who are looking at listings, they actually end up buying something. So you have to try to convince them to buy your product instead of the one of your competitors. So that's the first, mindset shift. I think it's very interesting what you.
And that's the thing, exactly. Think of it. A lot of people, they look at their listings and they're like, okay, I've got a 25, 35% conversion rate, and that's the highest it gets. And I'll tell you for certain, because I've worked on my own products, I've worked on a handful of other accounts. Like, I've seen unit session percentages in excess of 100%, because basically what happens is if you have a product where you can buy multiple quantities, the unit session percentage is basically someone coming in and buying 2+ quantities. And so obviously most people are not going to have a higher than 100% unit session percentage, but I'm just telling you the highest I've personally seen is 145%. And so it's like, if you do change that mindset to think, okay, if I have a 35% conversion rate, what this means to me is like, that really means, yeah, it's a big win that 35% of the people are buying the product, but also the other like 70% are not buying the product. And so you got to think like, they did buy a taco holder, but what most likely happened is they opened up a few other tabs and a competitor did a better job of convincing someone to buy their product versus yours, right? And that comes down to what I've seen.
Right. Okay, very interesting. Also, I think it's interesting, these numbers that you are giving, of the unit session percentage. I'm guessing that you could do several different experiments and A/B tests, but at some point, when would you say like enough is enough? You cannot like really A/B test everything all the time. Maybe do you have some numbers when you say, okay, this listing, it's performing like awesomely, so I can stop, doing all these efforts. Can you give us obviously a ballpark, because every category is different and every product is different?
I think more than anything, it actually comes down to the size of your team and your own ability to get these things done. Because any of us who are running a business, we have this laundry list of items of things that, okay, we know that we should be doing this, but we just don't have time to get around to doing it. And so I've had even big brands that come to me and they're like, okay, we want to set up someone who's ongoing, always testing our listings, always creating new creatives. And even in small teams, like I just haven't been able to set up a system where that actually works, because it's very labor intensive. And so what I actually think is like, I try to look at it from like the 80-20 rule, what's going to give you your highest ROI. And so if you have a small team, or maybe you're a solopreneur, you're working with freelancers, focus on one area where you can get a good ROI consistently. And that's going to be just focus on adjusting the main image. And we'll talk about how to do that in a minute, but like just focus on the main image. If you're working on a bigger team, you have like a wider scope, then you can go and do this on a more ongoing basis. But in reality, it's like, I think that if you put a concerted effort into testing, right, you spend like a month to 2 months, and then you just do that, right? You put up a new listing and you see how it performs. It's not something you need to be doing more than once a year. If you're a big team and you're a big aggregator and you've got like 20 people on your creative team, then it's a whole different story. But for the vast majority of people, I think you can actually get pretty similar results with like a creative work sprint for like a month, 2 months, just to knock it out, do the testing, and then, see what, check the data as time goes on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, makes sense. Obviously, if you have more resources, you can spend more on really optimizing to the best possible way. Right. So let's. You mentioned you may have something to add with like how to optimize main images, which you said is the main thing to increase conversion rate in the end, right? Except for price and reviews.
Yeah. So I like working on main image because if you think about, okay, you have one image here and you're very limited in terms of service, what you're even allowed to do. And so if you think about where a lot of entrepreneurs get tied up when it comes to creative process, is that the scope of work can be so big, right? If I'm working on creating A+ content, you have all of these different image modules, there's so much that you can change versus a main image. It's got to be the product. You can maybe put a couple extra items in there, but there's really not so much you can change. You can change the orientation, the layout. There's very, very small changes that can be made. So when you're working on the main image, right, what I recommend doing, and this is a very straightforward like SOP on how to do it, is you just have your current main image and you start thinking, okay, I have the current, what are all of the things that I could do with it? Maybe it's like I show a prop to give some context as to what the product is. If it's a multi-pack, maybe I change the layout of the items to be a little bit more visually appealing, right? Whatever it might be. If you have like a wearable product, maybe you have like a model that's wearing it or someone's wearing an outfit, like whatever it might be. And so I'm just trying to think of like, I want to come up with, I have my current main image. I want to come up with like somewhere in the range of like 3 to 8 alternate versions of that. And all I want to do is I want to test against my original until I have something that's much better. The amount of work here, what's really cool about this is just graphic design work. You don't need to usually go and need to do new photography. This can all be done in Photoshop. And so basically your directive to an in-house designer or a freelance designer is like, I want you to go create like maybe 8 different versions of this main image. We're going to test them against the original. And when I have a new winner against the original, then it's very simple. Then I'm just going to upload both of those into Amazon Manager Experiments, and I'm going to let that sit. And hopefully I'm going to see some kind of increase in click-through rate.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's interesting. So you're suggesting like 3 to 8 variations of the main image that you can test against your main one. Yeah. So we'll then pick a winner. And even guys, I think it's super valuable this, because if you even manage to raise your unit session percentage of 5% or 10%, but Anthony, what he was mentioning before, it was that you could you could even double your unit session percentage. Those are like numbers that are possible that he experienced in some cases with clients. So definitely, even with small improvements, you can get really huge results. Definitely. So this is about click-through rate. Right. So what would you say about conversion rate then? How do we optimize our listings for conversion rate?
Right. So if you think that click-through rate is all about conveying important information about the product to someone from that first page of search results to get them to click into the listing, right? That's the goal of the click-through rate. With the conversion rate, someone's already on your listing, right? They've taken that first step. They've identified that your product might be a fit. And so now they're on the listing. They want to buy the product. They're on the listing. Now what you need to do is you need to convince them that this specific product versus everyone else who's selling something similar, this specific product is the one you're looking for, and there's no need to look anywhere else. And so there we're really getting back to that list of like, okay, here's all of the things that someone needs to know about the product. Right? Their brain has a mental checklist in their brain, even if they don't realize it. Their brain has a mental checklist of what they need before they click add to cart. Some of it is going to be the look and feel of the listing. Does this look to be a legit brand, or does this look to be a low quality seller? But a lot of it comes down to functional things about the product, right? There's certain things that they want to know. They have an idea of like, this taco holder is going to be used, this isn't for a restaurant. This is like, this is a family product because they're going to have Tuesday taco nights. And so in the images, right, if that's what they have in their head about what they're looking for the taco holder. And there might be a large portion of people coming to this listing that are using this for like some kind of family dinners, right? And so if I have like my second image in the gallery or third image in the gallery where it's like, this is for families, and they see a family that looks like their family, and it looks like a happy, fun taco Tuesday night, right? Think about what that does for unit session percentage. Think of what that does for conversion. What I'm always trying to do is I'm trying to match, like, someone has a specific use case, someone has a specific like thing that they want to get out of this product. And I just want to be right in their face about like, yep, this is for you. And that's how you're bumping up those sessions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And what you're saying, it's something that we continuously come up with, in several episodes, is that you should know your customer very well. So that's really one of the basic thing. And you're saying that again, and obviously it makes sense into our process of optimization of our listings. But I'm curious now to understand your tips on how to set up these experiments for success, because there might be several ways, like what kind of variations do we put, how many of them, like how do we set up the experiments in a way that makes sense and it would give us good results?
Well, so first and foremost is two different types of experiments that you can run related to Amazon and selling and e-commerce in general. One is Amazon Manager Experiments. This is a tool that's actually through Amazon. It's inside of Seller Central, and it gives you the opportunity to test your main image, your A+ content, and your title. And you can actually run a live split test. The problem with Amazon's platform, I really love it and I encourage everyone to use it. But the thing is, I talk to sellers all the time. I talk to all the agency owners. I talk to everyone. And I'm like, who is actually running Manager Experiments? And very few people are. And the reason why is because it takes a long time to get any data. The tests have to run for a minimum of 4 weeks, and you're not even going to start getting information until you're 2 weeks in. They say it's going to be 7 days, but in my experience, it's been 2 weeks that you have to wait. So the problem of this is you put up a new main image onto your listing, and you actually don't know if it's going to put it in a positive direction. You're hoping that it will, but it actually very well could go in a negative direction. And so what I say and this is what a lot of people do, is you use something like PickFu as a precursor to running your managed experiments, right? So basically, in that earlier example, when I was talking about those 3 to 8 image variations for the main image, I'm going to go and I'm going to test, 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 because I have no idea which one of these 8 are going to actually win in the end. I have no idea. It's actually potentially some subset, some variation of one of those original 8 images. The thing I want to know for sure is that when I upload into Manager Experiments, because it takes so long, I want to make sure that what I'm putting up in there is good and it's been validated. And so that's where PickFu comes in. You don't have to wait 4 weeks. You'll get your results in like 30 minutes to an hour. And so there, if I'm going through like 3 to 4 variations of a main image, and it's like, okay, I'm tweaking one little thing, tweaking another little thing, and I go through like test 1, test 2, test 3, by the time I get to that third test, I know deep down, because I've validated it with PickFu, that, okay, this is a really strong option. And now I'm going to feel much more confident uploading that into Manager Experiments and actually waiting to see what Amazon says about that.
Yeah, for sure. These are two different, let's say, methods, and definitely, PickFu comes first into like understanding before you even launch the listing, or when or before you put your listing at risk of putting any image that might not perform. You could use that to run experiments, and then maybe using Amazon experiments to get some data on maybe images that are very similar to each other, maybe just changing the saturation of the image. That won't hurt too much, but you will get data from Amazon that could lead to better decisions. Right. So before we close, after you gave us some good tips, I would like to understand what are the main mistakes, most common mistakes that people make, and what we should do to avoid it.
The most common mistake I see is a lot of business owners, just like me, right? They don't have a creative background. They say, I'm not creative. I don't know how to do this stuff, and they either just don't want to touch it at all, or they want to hand it off to an agency that they think is just going to do everything for them. And in my experience, very few agencies, even if they tell you they're full service and they do all the research and everything, I think very few actually do. And so I think the biggest mistake is just someone saying, I'm not going to touch this. It's good enough. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to try. And so the thing that I'll say about all of this is, like, it sounds really complicated and it's really difficult at first, but it's just like exercising, right? The more you do something, the better you get. And so what I'm trying to encourage business owners and FBA sellers to do is just start trying this. And when you're going through and you're creating a new variation for your image or your product packaging, the most important thing is just get something down on paper. It doesn't even need to look good. You just got to get something down that you can start breaking apart and making a little bit better. Because the creative process, like the vast majority of the time, I'd say almost never do we get something right from the beginning. It's all the magic happens in the variations. It happens through the testing. And so if you can go in with the mindset that, okay, I might not know what I'm doing, I'm very uncomfortable doing this, but through the process, it's going to get better and better. And at the end, we're going to have a much better end result than what we currently have. You got to just start that process. And the biggest mistake is just saying, I can't do this. This is not for me.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, I totally agree. And so guys, don't be lazy, and make sure you use all the methods possible to really optimize your listing and get up those conversion rates and click-through rates. PickFu is something that I personally use. You guys know that I only recommend software and tools that I use myself. So for this episode, the guys at PickFu are giving a 50% discount to if you would like to run your first poll with PickFu. You can use code the seller process, and you will get a 50% off to run the first poll. Anthony, thank you very much for coming here. Would you like to leave us with a few words about how people can reach out to you and how can you help them with A/B testing before we close?
I'd say the biggest thing to go and check out is we have a webinar series that happens every Thursday. One's an introductory for PickFu called PickFu 101, and the alternate Thursday is called Thursday Teardown, where we do like a really in-depth process of breaking down listings. And so the whole thought with Thursday Teardown was like, I've got all this knowledge in my head about how to do this. And what if we could just show that, if people could see it enough times, the entire process, the entire creative process, the testing process, then it would start to click. And so if you're interested in learning more about this, go and check out that Thursday Teardown series, because it's very in-depth. We take a real e-com listing, we rip it apart, and we actually show how we would do these main image, secondary image optimizations. And there's a lot to learn there. So if you're new to this, check that out.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. So guys, remember the key to success is to emulate the best. So remember these tips that Anthony just shared and take action in optimizing your listing through A/B testings and running experiments. You can find some of these experiments that Anthony ran already with PickFu in the presentation that you can download in the description of the YouTube video or in the show notes of this episode that you can find in our website at thesellerprocess.com. All right, so check that out. You will find lots of useful tips and more information about how to run experiments and A/B tests. Right. So thank you very much, Anthony, for coming here today and sharing your knowledge. I hope to see you soon next time.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, entrepreneurs, I hope you enjoyed the episode and learned something from the interview. If you're serious about creating systems for your business, automating processes and building up your team so that you can transfer the tedious daily tasks in order to focus on more high-level strategic tasks and work on your business and not in your business, I've created a guide for Amazon sellers named Capturing Systems and Creating SOPs that you can find at thesellerprocess.com/systems ebook, where you will learn how to leverage systems and SOPs in your Amazon business so that you can accomplish more by working less, optimize your time, automate and delegate tasks, and reap the benefits of being a true business owner and not simply an operator in your own business. Go download the ebook at thesellerprocess.com/systems ebook and start implementing all the tips and insights that I share with you And leave us a review or a comment to let us know how the content we are sharing here is making an impact in your business. And have a productive week.